HOA president called me trash on my own ranch, so I built a 12-foot concrete wall she could never cross. She was still moving at full speed when she hit the horn. Her pearl-white Mercedes came tearing down my private gravel road, directly toward my pregnant heifers. Horn blaring without pause, dust filling the air, and Karen Whitmore leaning out the window, screaming that I needed to move my filthy cattle off what she had decided was community land. One young heifer went into early labor from the shock. That was the moment I stopped issuing warnings and started building something she would never be able to cross. My name is Caleb Turner. I am a semi-retired rancher and livestock consultant in Central Texas, and these 50 acres have belonged to my family since my grandfather cleared mesquite and rattlesnakes in 1940. This is not just land. It is where 3 generations of Turners are buried overlooking Willow Creek. It is where I asked my wife, Emily, to marry me beneath a lightning-split oak. It is where my father set every fence post by hand, and where my grandfather hauled caliche for this ranch road, 1 truckload at a time, back in 1942. Signed and witnessed when a handshake still carried the same weight as a court document. For 80 years, that road ran a quarter-mile from County Road 1247 across our main pasture to the house without a single legal dispute. Then Karen Whitmore arrived in Brookfield Estates and decided 3 generations of Turner history was an inconvenience she had the authority to remove. Karen was a divorced real estate broker from Dallas with money and judgment in opposite proportions. She purchased the largest home in the subdivision for close to $1 million and dressed for charity galas, even when retrieving her mail. Within 6 months, she had maneuvered herself into the HOA presidency and launched what she described as community enhancement programs. What that meant in practice was making life difficult for anyone unwilling to accept her version of how things should work. The conflict started simply. Karen discovered that cutting through my ranch shaved 3 minutes off her drive to the highway. For someone who spent an hour each morning applying enough cosmetics to paint a barn door, you would think 3 minutes would be insignificant. But Karen did not request permission. She did not knock on my door or leave a note or make any acknowledgement whatsoever that she understood the difference between a public road and private property. The first time she drove through, I assumed confusion. The second time, I approached her calmly and explained this was private land. She lowered her window and offered a smile so manufactured it seemed imported. She told me the dirt path had been public access forever, and that I could not deny neighbors their established community roots. I showed her the deed. I pointed to the posted signs. I explained that everything beyond my cattle gate had belonged to the Turner family for decades before she set foot in this county. Her smile hardened and she said, "We would see about that." Any Texan knows exactly what that phrase means. The next morning, she barreled through while I was moving my registered Angus bull, 1,500 pounds of muscle, valued considerably higher than her monthly car payment. She leaned on the horn and scattered cattle across the road. When I stepped into her path with raised hands, she accelerated. The sight of a $2,000 heifer limping away from a near collision with a luxury bumper told me everything I needed to know about where this was heading. 3 days later, a process server appeared at my gate holding a thick envelope from a law firm in Dallas. 3 pages of legal threats about prescriptive easements and continuous public use. They had calculated that the language alone would be enough to make me step aside. They had not calculated on me spending 6 hours at the Brookfield County Courthouse pulling every record tied to this property. Every document confirmed Turner ownership. The road was private. My father had corrected a survey error in 1987. And the correction was on file. Karen's legal theory had no foundation in any record that existed. Then the real picture came into focus. Luis Alvarez, our mail carrier and the most reliable source of local information in the county. stopped at my mailbox one Tuesday morning. He told me Karen had been hosting property showings and advertising exclusive ranch road access as a selling feature. Buyers from Dallas were being told my private drive was community heritage access included with their purchase. Over $2 million in pending sales depended on a road she did not own. I began logging every incident with the precision of a man who understood that documentation was the foundation of everything that would follow. Dates, times, license plates, descriptions, certified letters went out informing Karen and her buyers that they were being recorded and that prosecution for trespass was not a threat but a scheduled outcome if the violations continued. Her response was to escalate. Morning commute, midday errands, evening drives, and now prospective buyers walking across my pasture while Karen described my cattle land as a premium community amenity. She filed noise complaints about my cattle. 40 years of ranching on this property without a single complaint and suddenly registered. Longhorns were a neighborhood disturbance. She reported my consulting work as unauthorized business activity. She began leaving my gate open at night. I would find it swinging at sunrise, with cattle drifting to Ward County Road 1247. In Texas, loose livestock means liability that can ruin a ranch operation in a single accident. The insurance agent told me plainly that without documented property damage, the matter remained civil. Keep recording everything, he said. Traffic violations alone would not support criminal charges. So I recorded with the dedication of a man compiling his own survival manual, 47 separate incidents, each photographed, time-stamped, and logged in a binder that grew thicker with every week. Karen continued. Betty Coleman had worked county records longer than most buildings in Brookfield had been standing. She pulled me aside during one of my courthouse visits and told me Karen's former husband was a Dallas city councilman and that she had been calling Commissioner Williams about emergency rural access concerns. This was no longer an eccentric neighbor against a stubborn rancher. This was connected money against country roots, and the odds had shifted considerably. Then Maria Delgado called. Maria is the only real estate broker across 3 counties who refuses to oversell, which makes her rarer than August rain in central Texas. She told me Karen had approximately $2.3 million in pending transactions that all depended on access to my land. The realization settled like a rifle finding its mark. Karen was not using my road for convenience. She was marketing it. Every contract she had written advertised authentic Texas ranch entry as a premium feature. Her financial survival depended entirely on my surrender. Betty dug deeper and found what turned the picture completely. In North Dallas, in 2019, Karen had promised buyers exclusive access to privately owned lakefront property she did not control. The rightful owner refused. Karen paid $95,000 in damages and lost her real estate license for 18 months. This was not impulsive behavior. This was her professional blueprint. My ranch was simply her newest application of a scheme she had already run once before. My attorney, Thomas Bellamy, called on a Thursday afternoon with the energy of a man who had just found something buried deep and valuable. He had located the original Brookfield Estates Development Agreement in the county archives. Section 12, subsection D, stated plainly that the HOA contract expressly waived any claim to pre-existing ranch roads within 1,000 feet of development boundaries. Karen's own association had relinquished rights to my road before they poured a single foundation. Either her expensive Dallas attorneys had missed this or assumed I would never find it. Thomas kept going. Karen had personally guaranteed the HOA construction overruns. Her home, her Mercedes, every asset she owned was listed as collateral against $340,000 in debt she had accumulated through unauthorized community upgrades, ornamental landscaping, decorative street lighting, a resort-style pool complex that looked more like a private club than a subdivision amenity. She needed property values to rise 15% within 18 months just to cover what she had already spent. Without my road, she faced recall, bankruptcy, and the collapse of everything she had staked on this gamble. I sat across from Thomas in his office and listened to the full picture assembling itself in front of me. Karen Whitmore had backed herself into a corner, tighter than livestock in a squeeze chute. She could not withdraw without confronting fraud allegations. She could not proceed because my property rights traced back to the county's earliest surveys. She had one move left, and it was the one I had been preparing for. I called Rafael Molina on a Friday morning. Rafael has built livestock enclosures, storm shelters, and reinforced barns across this county for 30 years. If something must survive Texas weather and determined personalities, he is the man you call. I walked him along the boundary where my ranch road met the subdivision and explained the situation in full. He measured distances and drew lines in the dirt with a mesquite branch while I watched. His solution was 12 feet high, reinforced steel and concrete with a foundation 4 feet below grade. 8-inch thick walls laced with rebar, dense enough to stop anything short of an act of God. Solar-powered entry system with battery backup, motion-triggered cameras, coded keypad access that rotated on a scheduled cycle, permitted under Texas rural land statutes as an agricultural security partition, even eligible for a partial tax deduction as livestock protection infrastructure. The cost was $52,000. Materials, labor, permits, and inspections. An amount that made my bank balance uncomfortable, but that I had been setting aside since Karen Whitmore's first unlawful crossing. My grandfather's lesson had been clear. Sometimes you raise a fence so formidable that even imagining crossing it gives a person second thoughts. Construction began Monday at first light. Karen appeared 15 minutes later in a white executive suit that likely cost more than my annual veterinary expenses. Accompanied by 3 women who looked recruited from a charity committee, she demanded we cease unlawful construction immediately and announced she had brought a county inspector to document our violations. The inspector reviewed our permit binder for 5 minutes and confirmed that every specification met or exceeded code. Karen's committee began whispering as he retreated to his truck faster than a cat with its tail on fire. Tuesday morning brought sabotage. Someone had attacked the foundation forms overnight. Concrete molds pried apart, rebar scattered. The security cameras had recorded the entire performance. A figure in dark clothing with a crowbar arriving around 2 in the morning, working with approximately the same construction knowledge a city dog applies to cattle management. The face was hidden, but a BMW parked along the county road at that hour was as familiar to me as Sunday church bells. Deputy Martinez reviewed the footage and confirmed criminal mischief. Without a clear facial identification, the BMW remained circumstantial. We filed the report, documented the damage, repaired it the same day, and continued building. Karen's media campaign launched that afternoon. 3 television crews arrived, and she staged a neighborhood rally with hand-painted signs about emergency access and agricultural bullying. The irony was thick enough to plow. Thomas Bellamy met every reporter with a packet of documentation, property deeds going back to 1940, permits for the agricultural security wall, records of 47 trespassing incidents, Karen's prior license suspension, and the 2019 fraud judgment. The cameras shifted focus almost immediately. That evening, Maria Santos called during supper with news that the Henderson family had canceled their $500,000 contract and was threatening fraud lawsuits. 2 more families followed before morning. Karen's desperation reached its final form on Thursday when she came to my gate alone. No committee, no cameras, just a woman and a checkbook operating on delusion. She offered $25,000 for a permanent easement. I continued filling cattle troughs. She went to 50,000. Ray's crew poured the final wall section behind us. She reached 75,000 and added an offer to withdraw all complaints. I looked at her directly and told her my property rights were not available at any price. She should have considered negotiation before she declared war on my family. At 3 in the morning on Friday, her BMW appeared on my security cameras, approaching the nearly completed gate at ramming speed. The impact sounded like thunder. German engineering met Texas concrete at 35 miles per hour, and the concrete won completely. The gate held. The BMW's front end folded like foil. Steam poured from the destroyed radiator as Karen climbed out in the dark, screaming obscenities suitable for a sailor's reunion. Emily and I watched the footage over morning coffee with the particular satisfaction of people who had built something specifically for this moment. The annual Millbrook County Fair provided the stage for the final scene. Clear blue Texas sky, funnel cake and barbecue smoke in the air, and Karen marching through the main gate with her remaining supporters carrying signs about rancher bullying. She commandeered the microphone at the county officials' presentation and addressed the crowd about illegal walls blocking emergency access. Every camera in the fairgrounds turned toward her. Then I stepped up to the same microphone. I told the crowd my name and said plainly that Karen Whitmore had been trespassing on my private property for 6 months and was upset that I had built a legal wall to protect my cattle from her harassment. I handed documentation packets to every reporter present, property deeds, permits, records of 47 violations, her prior fraud conviction. The buyers Karen had deceived stepped forward one by one. The Texas Real Estate Commission investigator announced her license suspension to the assembled crowd and rolling cameras. Deputy Martinez appeared from the crowd with a warrant and placed her under arrest for criminal trespass, property damage, fraud, and vehicle assault, as the cameras recorded every second. Her walk past my 12-foot wall made for perfect television. 6 months later, she pleaded guilty rather than face a jury of ranchers who understood property rights better than most people understand anything. 18 months probation, $25,000 in restitution, a permanent restraining order keeping her 500 feet from my property line, and the permanent loss of her real estate license. Civil judgments from defrauded buyers added another $180,000 and forced the sale of her mansion. The new HOA leadership turned out to be reasonable people. President Williams, a retired teacher with more sense than ambition, issued a formal apology at their first meeting and established a good neighbor policy built on actual respect for property boundaries. We hosted a barbecue at the ranch that brought together old families and reasonable newcomers. My wall became something of a local landmark, and Rafael Molina's company started using our project as their showcase example with the unofficial slogan, "Built to Stop BMWs and Bullies." The Millbrook Ranch Education Fund grew from the speaking fees I earned presenting at property rights seminars and has since awarded scholarships to 12 rural students pursuing agricultural degrees. Every experience, even the expensive and exhausting ones, can be turned into something useful if you are willing to do the work after the dust settles. My morning routine is unchanged. Coffee, cattle check, gate operation, for invited guests only. The difference is the absence of stress that lived in my chest for 6 months and the return of the particular quiet that this land has carried since my grandfather first walked it. The wall stands at the boundary as permanent and unmovable as the rights it was built to protect. Emily sits beside me on the porch in the evenings, and we watch the sunset burn red over 50 acres that will pass to the next generation of Turners exactly as it came to us. Some people arrive in a place and immediately begin measuring what they can take from it. Others arrive and spend their lives building something worth leaving behind. The difference between those two kinds of people is not money or ambition or connections. It is whether they understand that what belongs to someone else was never theirs to take, regardless of how confidently they reach for it. Property rights are not suggestions. They are not flexible based on who wants something badly enough or who has enough legal language at their disposal. They are the foundation of everything honest people build. And when someone tests that foundation with enough force, sometimes the most complete answer you can give is 12 feet of steel-reinforced concrete that will still be standing long after they are gone.